Welcome back, this is Goku Sun DBZ, and today I thought I would talk about quickly a special top 10 list, or top 5 list. This is my personal top 5 favorite video game developers of all time. So with that said, let's look at a few honorable mentions, and some of the publishers I will mention a specific time period for them. First up of the honorable mentions, Atlus Games, best well known for, of course, a little series called Persona as well as Shin Megami Tensei. Also, Arc System Works, best well known for obviously their fighting games. Also, 90s era Activision, pre-Bobby Kotick. Also, 90s to early 2000s or even mid 2000s, Konami. Back when Team Silent existed. Also, honorable mentions, Ubisoft, because I'm not gonna act like Ubisoft doesn't even still make occasionally some great games. They do. Like the Rayman games, or Rayman Legends, Rayman Origins are both superb games. I'm not gonna act like I don't think some. I enjoyed Assassin's Creed. Specifically, I thought Origins was a good game. I haven't actually played Odyssey, so I don't really have an opinion on Odyssey. Um, Also, SNK, best well known for obviously Fatal Fury, Samurai Showdown, and King of Fighters. Personally, for me, though, Samurai Showdown and Fatal Fury are the series that hold the biggest place for me personally from SNK. Also, of honorable mentions, 90s era Electronic Arts, back when they actually cared. Also, from the 90s and stuff, THQ, as well as honorable mention Midway. And the last honorable mention I have to give to a little somebody back in the 90s and 2000s, Naughty Dog, back when they did like Crash, as well as like Jak and Daxter. That was when I liked Naughty Dog. Coming at number 5 should not be too big a surprise, as I am a big Sega fan. Shouldn't be surprised. My number 5 favorite game publisher of all time goes to Sega, as I definitely have a lot of fond memories for the Sega Genesis, Saturn, and of course my all-time favorite console, the Dreamcast. And Sega has done some incredible games throughout the years, specific franchises and some weird ones I really like. Stuff like obviously Columns, Panzer Dragoon series, or Sonic, specifically Sonic 2, Sonic Adventure, as well as many other Sonic games that I really hold very highly. Sega has done many great games, of course, Jet Run Radio, Jet Set Radio Future. There's many all-time classics, in my opinion, from Sega, which is why it comes in at 5th place. Coming in at number 4 favorite developer of all time, Nintendo. Best well known specifically for things like Mario games, like more specifically Super Mario World, also Super Mario Sunshine, which is underrated. Also, Super Mario Odyssey. Also, The Legend of Zelda, specifically Link to the Past, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, Majora's Mask, which is underrated. Link Between Worlds. I mean, there's a many countless amount of great classic games Nintendo has made throughout the years, and I appreciate them for that. And for the Super Nintendo, as well as the GameCube, and also the underrated Wii U, and the surprising amount of good stuff, though it's weird how much Wii U stuff gets ported to Switch, in my opinion. But one thing I will give to Nintendo is, specifically for me, Nintendo has always made a lot of my personal favorite platformers of all time, along with Rare, which also I should have had in honorable mention, so now Rare. Coming in number 3 is a franchise or developer that specifically has made many games throughout the years I love, which is what's my third favorite of all time. Uh, Bandai Namco, or Namco Bandai, however you want to say the name. Namco has always held a special place for me, as they are the developers of course, Soul Calibur, my favorite fighting or weapon-based fighting game of all time, Tekken, which really was a heavy influence on me getting into fighting games. I mean, especially Tekken 2 was a big influence for me personally. The introduction when I really started liking the character Kazuya, though he wouldn't show up again until in mainline until Tekken 4. But also Tekken 3 is an incredible game, and that's when we would see Roy the debut on the scene of Harada, which is arguably one of the most important people nowadays at Namco, or Bamco as some people have nicknamed it. But yeah, and also well known for the Tales series of RPGs. Um, Also for many anime fighting games, like specifically the Naruto Shippuden games, the Dragon Ball Z fighters, and many others. Namco also was a heavy influence of my early era love of classic arcade games, such as specifically a little something called Pac-Man, which is one of my all-time favorites, as well as they were responsible for Galaga, Galaxian, which is underrated in my opinion, Excitebike, many all-time classic arcade games. Namco's been a big, heavy face and name in gaming going back to the early 80s. They've been around for many years, and they've influenced also anime greatly with creating a little some dough on the side called the Gundam franchise, of course, specifically, as well as you have many other things they have influenced. And I can't say enough. I mean, between like arts, many good RPGs, and of course they were the ones who money-wise backed or not Kojima, but Miyazaki, with of course the development of what is called the Soul series. They would end up being the ones who really backed up and really responsible for Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3. Also, Elden Ring, as well as, of course, other games such as similar. But yeah, they have been very key, important figures for a long time. Coming in at number 2, personal favorite game developer of all time, was the company that introduced me to RPGs, JRPGs in general. Arguably my number 2 favorite game publisher of all time, though it's gone back and forth between 2 and 1. Number, as of right now though, number 2 for me is Square Enix. Better well known as Squaresoft in the 90s. Responsible for, of course, my introduction to Final Fantasy with, of course, Final Fantasy 3, aka Final Fantasy 6 on the SNES, which I appreciate. Also responsible for introducing me to things like Chrono Trigger, all-time classic, and my introduction to the great amount of beautiful artwork from, of course, Akira Toriyama, as well as responsible for my all-time favorite series, Kingdom Hearts, though it wouldn't exist without Final Fantasy, to be fair. Also, you have many other great franchises throughout the years Square's done. Parasite Eve is a personal favorite of mine, with a lot of nostalgia. Also, I've really enjoyed the Dissidia games, also from Square, underrated from the PS1 era. Specifically, Bushido Blade 1 and 2. Took a minute to think about, but yeah, which was a very unique weapon-based fighting game unlike any others out there. Though they have also been responsible for platformers but let's be honest, their bread and butter is RPGs. And always, pretty much, I think, will be for the most part. But they have done some truly all-time classic great games throughout the years. And with that said, coming in at number one favorite publisher of all time. And I feel the need to quickly change the music. Coming in at number one needs no true introduction as they are responsible for a little franchise called Street Fighter. And that is a little company called Capcom. Yes, my number one favorite game developer of all time is Capcom, as it is responsible for my number one favorite fighting game franchise of all time, Street Fighter. Specifically Street Fighter 2 and the Alpha series, as well as Marvel vs. Capcom, Capcom vs. SNK. Many great crossovers. Capcom is also responsible for a little series I've only been introduced to in more recent years, known as Monster Hunter. Also responsible for a series that I love and I wish more people would play, though it's not around really now, I wish they'd bring back. And that's a little series called Dino Crisis. Also, Rival Schools, Project Justice, Power Stone, as well as many other fighting games that, to name off, they showed a great amount of love to also the Sega Saturn and the Sega Dreamcast. Maybe that's one reason. Also, I'm a little biased towards Capcom. Also, Capcom is responsible for a little franchise called Biohazard, better well known as Resident Evil, which is an all-time great. And specifically, I'll never forget the first time playing Resident Evil 1 or the original Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil Code Veronica, and the reinvention with Resident Evil 4 going more towards, and then even reinventing again in first person with Resident Evil 7. With even VR compatibility, and experiencing 7 in VR is a level of creepiness factor unto itself that nothing else has been able to duplicate since, for me personally. As well as many other things throughout the years. I mean, let's be honest, look how enormous, influential, Capcom was on me specifically growing up. Fighting game-wise, I predominantly, mostly only played as a kid and teenager. Most fighting games I played were either developed by Capcom or Namco. There was those few exceptional games, such as Destrega, done by Koei Tecmo, better well known for, of course, the Dead or Alive franchise. And with that said, Capcom has managed to come back to life in recent years and rejuvenate itself. And of course, I am still a big uber defender of Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, and I always will be. Just like Street Fighter Cross Tekken, I love as well. And the music, great. And at the end of the day, I am happy with what they did with Street Fighter V. They managed to actually make it a lot better throughout the years, even bringing back the live stream games. But I am truly somebody who loves and appreciates Capcom for everything they have done throughout the years in gaming, whether it be fighting games, survival horror, or even into the realm of RPGs. But Capcom's importance cannot be understated. How important they really are, especially to arcades. If it wasn't for Resident Evil 2, arcades would have probably died in the 90s, wouldn't have survived as long as they did. As well as the fact they introduced me to the crossover franchise of Marvel vs. Capcom, with X-Men vs. Street Fighter, as well as X-Men Children of the Atom, Marvel superheroes, battling for the gems, or Infinity Stones. Also, Marvel vs. Capcom 2, experimenting with cool jazzy blues music, which I really appreciate. And I think in general, for me, the reason specifically these 5 companies are my top 5 is because of nostalgia. Sega was a big part of my younger years, early era of getting into gaming. Same thing for Nintendo. Specifically, the Genesis and the Super Nintendo were big influences on me. Namco, because of really being my introduction to 3D fighting games, as well as things like Gundam, are really some of the big reasons for me. That and the classic arcade games like Dig Dug, games like, as I've already said, Pac-Man. Also, Square, because of being my introduction into JRPGs like Final Fantasy, and also my favorite game of all time, Final Fantasy VIII. Also, Capcom, because of being my introduction to survival horror games, which is arguably in my top 5 favorite genres of gaming to this day. As is also, of course, obviously fighting games, which Capcom was the biggest influence, given 50% of my favorite fighting games of all time were made by Capcom. So that should say something. I mean, if you're curious, I did a while back a list 20 favorite Capcom fighting games of all time. Get a chance, check it out. But with that said, I'll see y'all next time. Same time, same YouTube channel. And leave a comment below and tell me, what are your personal favorite game developers of all time? I'm actually curious to see what some other people's opinions are. What were the ones really influential on you growing up for nostalgia factor and everything? But with that said, I'll see y'all next time. Same time, same YouTube channel.